This week on Camera Talk, we're going back to the beginning. Back to the beginning of time.
The wonderful world of Cameraland.
My photography days. So, this is my humble beginnings. I bought myself a Canon M50, figuring I'd get all current at the time. But it was between $500–600. It was economical. 15 to 45 millimeter kit lens came with it. It's an okay lens. The 15 millimeter is actually good for my YouTube videos anyway. But I figured it wasn't good enough. If I'm going to be a photographer, I need a 50. So I got the Nifty 50, the Canon M50 1.8. And I figured, well, that's still not good enough. I need a 35 millimeter to do street photography and wider angle stuff and whatnot. So I got a Yongnuo, I think that's how you say it. Yongnuo, maybe. It's a 35 millimeter. What is this thing anyway? It's an f2. Not quite a 1.8, but it's an f2, which isn't bad for a 35. But are they good quality? Let's see. Are they good for beginners? Probably they were good enough for me, right? So let's take a look at these two and come on with me and we'll kind of dig a little deeper into them anyway. So let's get at it.
Here I am, Vietnam. Rain is always coming down.
This is Camera Talk with Dr. Scott. This week, I'm going back to the beginning, back to my earliest days of photography here in Vietnam anyway. The very first thing I was thinking, of course, like most people these days, when it comes to photography, this is your camera.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fun, and this is for fun.
Right? It's with you all the time, and as the more recent saying goes, the best camera you have is the one you have with you, right? Which for most of us is your camera phone, or your smartphone, or your cell phone, or whatever you want to call it. But I decided, several years ago that I wanted to get into a little more classical photography, with taking stills photos, but be able to also make videos at the same time. So that's pretty much where cameras have evolved to these days, as being a combination of stills camera and video. And so that's how they're sold to us, through the various marketing programs of Canon and Sony and Fuji and Olympus and Panasonic and so forth and so on and so on. There's still companies out there who focus specifically on stills cameras, like my little friend, my M10 over here. But, its predecessor had a video option, the M camera before the 10, the 240 and the 262. But anyway, the M10 went back to basics, back to stills photography. But anyway, that's why I got into the systems that I have now, is because I needed both. I needed stills, but I needed video as well. So, being on a budget, which is kind of what really what brought us to modesty photography, thinking of things that are budgetary and whatnot. Not all of us are rich, so, we gotta live within our means. And so I went camera shopping, and, I went into a Canon store, and what I was looking for was a Canon Rebel. From what I'd read, the Rebel was kind of the economical bang for the buck camera to get. But when I was in the actual store itself, there was the owner of the store said, well, we're all out of Rebels at the time. But we have Canon's, latest, greatest M50, is what he was pushing at the time. And I was like, I'm not, I had my heart set on the Rebel. And there was another customer in there actually who had just purchased an M50. And so he kind of put on his little salesman hat and started lecturing me on the advantages of the M50. So I ended up getting one. That's what I have here. They were all out of the black version, so all they had in stock was white. I was kind of, I don't know if I really want to get a white one because they get kind of, white would get dirty, right? Ew! But because of the, the veneer on the outside of the, even though yes, it's plastic, but it's a very smooth plastic, so therefore even if it got dirty, you can use your t-shirt and clean it off, that kind of thing. So it wasn't that bad. And again, it wasn't a fashion statement for me anyway, so I didn't really care what color it was. I guess I would if it was bright pink or something.
Oh, behave.
Might not be so keen on that, but being white was fine with me. But anyway, so, it came with this 15 to 45 kit lens, which is an okay lens. It does its job. And of course, this is an EFM mount, which is very different from, again, my Leica M mount, very different. But the EFM mount, at the time, was relatively new, and there was only a handful of lenses to support it. But I wasn't even thinking that big of a picture at the time. I was thinking this is just good enough for me, and it was for a week or two, and then I started reading up again. As a PhD, I'm a natural researcher, so I started reading about different things, and I ended up buying a 22 millimeter to go on this, which is a great little street lens. It works for, it's like the equivalent on a full frame, because this is an APS-C, I should say, by the way. It's an APS-C crop sensor, and since it's Canon, it's a 1.6 crop sensor, so anything you put on here is multiplied by 1.6 to get a full frame equivalent. So my 22 was, roughly a 35-ish, which is great for street photography or walking around type lens. But from what I was reading, to get a real full frame lens was something I was after. Now, of course, again, because I was new to APS-C, I didn't kind of click into what that really meant by putting it on here. But my very first idea to get a full frame lens for my camera was to get a 35 millimeter. And again, on a budget, I decided that, hey, I'm not going to pay, hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a Canon or Nikon or, Leica or anything else out there. So again, researching online, I'd read a number of articles that said this little Chinese company here, Yongnuo, I think I say that right, I don't know, Yongnuo maybe, was decent, bang for the buck. This is $100 lens. So again, on a budget, kind of right up my alley. So $100 lens. This is a 35 f2, so it's fast enough for low light situations and whatnot. So I bought it. I bought this, and then right after it, I ended up buying what you're probably more familiar with when it comes to popular lenses and budget lenses, is what's known as the Nifty 50. This is a Canon 50 millimeter 1.8, and it's the STM stepper motor version, and tons of popular reviews on this one. Positive stuff. Beautiful rendition, great bokeh, so forth and so on. So I started off with my Yongnuo, however you say it.
Ancient Chinese secret.
And it's okay. It's one of these lenses that's, it's got a lot of mixed reviews. Some people love it, some people hate it. The haters out there are generally because they had issues with the aperture blades locking up. So they were stuck in whatever position they locked up on. Some could be fixed, some couldn't. But luckily at $100, you can kind of classify that as a disposable lens. You can toss it out and just buy another one. It's got metal mounts and everything, gold-plated, contacts. So I would classify that as a good bang for the buck, so to speak. Now, because, I bought this one first and I thought it looked, the images were good and whatnot. I was happy with them. But then when I bought the 50 millimeter, I loved it much, much, much more. So I used it consistently time after time again. And my 35 started gathering dust, and it still does. It sits in the back corner of my shelf, back in the darkest dungeon back there, supporting other lenses stacked on top of it. So as great as it was for a starter lens, there's just a lot other better ones out there. But as I said, depending on your needs and your finances and everything else, this is plenty good enough. It's a plastic fantastic, as they say. Everything is cheapy plastic on here.
Crap.
But it does have an AF MF switch, so you can go autofocus or manual focus on it. The specs on this little guy here are seven elements in 5 groups. Its close focus distance, which is pretty good, is 25 centimeters, or is that in inches? 9.84 inches. Not bad for, again, a 35 millimeter. 7 aperture blades, and it's fairly light. It's 155 grams, or 5.49 ounces. So it's there's a 4.7 ounces. So yeah, it's, as I said, if you're on a pretty tight budget and you're looking for decent enough quality, as I say, bang for the buck, so to speak, then this little guy is kind of what you're looking at. Now on a full frame, it's a 35 millimeter. On the APS-C, if you have Sony or Fujifilm, Nikon, they're 1.5 crop factor, so this is the equivalent of a 52.5 millimeter lens. On Canon, which is 1.6 crop factor, it's 56 millimeter full frame equivalent. On a Micro Four Thirds, which I don't have, it's 2 times crop factor, so easy, 2 times 35 is 70, right? So, and that's, again, looking at crop factors, I've talked about that in other videos. It's one of the advantages of the crop factors are the extended reach. So this little 35 becomes a 70 millimeter lens on a Micro Four Thirds, meaning you can get farther out to, get a close focus far away. So how do I use this on my APS-C? Because again, this is EF mount, which is full frame Canon mount, versus I have an EFM mount here. And what I did is I like Viltrox for their speed booster, and I have a speed booster to which I can use this on to make it more of an actual 35 millimeter, so equivalent. But the thing with speed boosters though too is it has glass in them, so you're adding an element of glass into your mix. And for some people that's okay. For some people they're like squeamish in that regard. So as usual, I want to take a photo of the end of the lens that I'm using. I'm shooting this video with my A7R II Sony. But I just want to show you guys what this what this looks like in real time. So let me get rid of my my kit lens here, mount my adapter. So as I said, I can leave it, I'll leave it on autofocus. So what I'm going to do is Let me get my screen out behind me here. So I'm going to increase my ISO just to get a nice clear shot in here. All right, so there's the end of the lens. So 1, 2, 3. All right, so that is that. I'm also going to show you some shots I took of Dylan on this camera using this lens earlier. So let me show you those right here. All right, so that was the 35 on my APS-C. Now, let me swap this out with my. I'm also going to use my my original A7 to show you an equivalent full frame of this same lens, but on an actual full frame. So as I said, all right, so on the end of the lens, here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, so that is the Fat Jack. That's 35 millimeter on full frame, so you can see the field of view difference between the crop factor APS-C version and on the full frame itself. All right, so let's move on to talking about the Canon. Oh, wait. I forgot to show you some pictures of Dylan with the full frame 35. So let's look at those here. All right, now let's talk about the Canon. So this is the Canon Nifty 50, very famous, the plastic fantastic. Again, $125. Today I'm thinking maybe even cheaper. It could be 120 or so. Actually, both of these lenses were introduced in 2015. Of course, this is a later rendition model of the original 51.8, but this is the latest greatest version, 6-year-old lens, but it's their best version as well. So again, it's pretty famous for beautiful renditions, color, the bokeh, the autofocus, everything is fantastic on this guy. On the APS-C, again with 1.5 crop factor, if you're putting this on a Sony or Nikon or Fujifilm or whatnot, it's going to be a 75 full frame equivalent. On this, because it's a Canon, it's a 1.6 APS-C crop factor. It's the equivalent of an 80 millimeter, and on a micro four thirds, of course, is 2 times. So 2 times 50 is 100, right?
I hate math.
So 100 millimeter. It's again, it's a super little lens. I used this to death, basically. Used it. Again, at $120 or so, if you break it or drop it, or if it doesn't work anymore, throw it away, get another one. Very economical, and they're all over the place. Brand new. You can buy a used one, probably even cheaper. But it's a great all around lens. The specs on it are a little different from the 35. 6 elements in 5 groups. Its close focus is 35 millimeters, which is 13.78 inches. Got the same blades, seven aperture blades. Just a tad bit heavier than the Yungyo. It's 159 grams, which is 5.6 ounces. But again, it's a super little lens. It's a great starter lens for beginners who want to experiment with 50 millimeter, which is, in photography terms, is a normal lens. It's what we normally see when we look around the room. We're kind of in a 50 millimeter field of view type thing. So anyway, so let me give you again a shot at the end of the barrel. So 1, 2, 3. All right, and also some shots of Dylan using the 50 millimeter on the Canon. So let's look at those. And now let me put it on the full frame on my Sony, just to show you again what that's going to look like on a full frame sensor. So, all right, and let me get the power on here. All right, so, all right, 1, 2, 3. All right, so you're going to see the difference between, again, the field of view on full frame versus the APS-C. Again, it's an excellent little lens. There's really no complaints that I have with this lens, and it works as well as it's hyped up to be. So and here's some pictures of Dylan that I took with the 50 millimeter as well. All right, so that was kind of my intention this week anyway, was kind of just to give you guys an idea of my starter kit setup. When it comes to the camera itself, I'm not going to give you any shots of the kit lens here, because the focus of this was really on my two lenses here, my 35 and my 50. So can I recommend these lenses? When it comes to bang for the buck, as I said, sure. This 35 here is okay. If you want to boil it down, it's good, but it's not great. It's good enough. Especially if you're just starting off and you're on a budget. $100. It's kind of a toss-out lens. If you're not that happy with it, oh well. I've considered throwing it out a few times just to save space, but I'm also a bit of a pack rat, as you can see by my lens collection. So I have a hard time throwing things out. So can I recommend it? Sure, for the reasons that I just stated. Obviously, if you're a pro and you're a pixel peeper and you're picky about everything, the Yungyo might not be your option.
No way.
Center sharpness is okay. Corners are a little soft and mushy, wide open. I always talk about everything wide open because, of course, you stop down. Almost any lens, even the cheapest, crappiest lens out there, tends to get better, as you stop down. So a true test of the lens is how good it performs wide open. So the 35 is an okay lens. It's good, but not great. The 50 is kind of opposite of that. It's borderline between good and great. It's especially bang for the buck. I mean, if you're just looking at the value of what you get for the money, $125, it's a great lens. Fantastic. That's why they call it the plastic fantastic, right? But yeah, the 50 millimeter, again, is a very common, you know, normal lens, as they say. So it's, and then on an APS-C, it's a great, you know, even though on a full frame, you can use 50s for portraiture for sure. No reason not to. But on the APS-C, that 50 does become, you know, a portrait lens. You know, as I said, for, you know, between the 1.5 crapter.
Holy crap!
Crapter? 1.5 crop factor and 1.6, it's between a 75 and an 80, which is, you know, roughly around portraiture lens stuff anyway, which is typically 75, 85, 90, 100-ish, you know, in that range. But, so, yeah. Highly recommend. I'd definitely get that Canon if I were you. Even if you already have some, like, top-of-the-line glass, you know, keep this one as a kind of a emergency 50. You can toss it in your pocket, not even know it's there. So that's my recommendation. And so let me kind of wrap that up by saying, if you're a starter, if you're a beginner, don't go out spending thousands of dollars on the top of the line, this and that, because, you know, you may not really continue with your photography. You know, you don't really know. You're a beginner. You don't know what you like and what you don't like. So get the cheapy stuff just to test it out, learn the ropes, figure out how to use autofocus, how to use manual focus, how to work with your camera settings and everything. These M50s are still on the market. You know, they're, again, relatively cheap. They're $500 or so. But here at Modesty Photography, you know, we still recommend, you know, used. Buy as used as much as you can. My two Sonys are used. My Leicas, I have two Leicas, they're used. This actually M50 is the only new one I bought, because again, you know, when I was in the store, I was kind of an impulse shopper, and I just bought it. But everything else I try to buy used, and save yourself some money. Now, of course, you have to also make sure, if you're buying used, that you try it out and make sure it works properly too. You don't want to buy someone else's junk. So a little bit of word to the wise there. Buyer beware. So this leads me to Luminar. Yes, my little plug for Luminar. Luminar AI. Great little photo editing software. You know, Luminar by itself is more of a full-blown package. AI is kind of the, I don't know if you want to call it the lazy man's editor, because artificial intelligence is helping determine what things look like before you do anything. So but they're cool. They're economical. Again, economics is my thing. You know, it's $89. And it's yours for life. You buy a full-blown package, but if you click below, you get a $10 discount from Dr. Scott. So who doesn't like a $10 savings, right? I get a little kickback from that myself.
$1 million.
But speaking of kickbacks, why don't you help me out exposing my channel too, and subscribe? That's right. It's not going to hurt you at all. You don't have to hit the notification bell like everybody's. Hit your notification bell. So subscribe, and you know, hit the thumbs up right there. But first, you have to subscribe. That's right. And the thumbs up, as I said, the thumbs up helps with the algorithms too for YouTube, and, you know, again, exposes me to more people out there and so forth and so on. Plus, it gives me the chance to give you the thumbs up, girls. And last but not least, be safe out there, huh? You know, this world of COVID is getting, you know, it's ups and downs, it's ins and outs. Here, I'm in Vietnam right now. We're on lockdown, you know. We went a year and a half with nothing happening here in that scene, and all of a sudden, bam! It's like somebody dropped a big old COVID bomb on us, and
Shit, oh my god! Oh my god!
so here we are in lockdown. So stay safe out there. you know, get your vaccine or don't get your vaccine. I'm not going to really push you to go either way. I got mine because, you know, the science behind vaccines kind of is pretty supported. So anyway, take your chances, and how about we see you next week? Yeah, we put out another video. We're going to come back and look at some other little points here in photography. So again, stay safe, have fun. Remember, you belong here. That's right, at Modesty Photography. So this was Camera Talk with Dr. Scott. And you come on back next week and we'll do it all over again. Yeah, all right. So thanks for dropping by, and we'll have a nice week. Have a nice weekend. And we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Here I am, Vietnam.